February 1948. The Strait of Malacca, that narrow ribbon of sea squeezed between Malaysia and Indonesia. It's one of the busiest shipping lanes on Earth, with thousands of vessels passing through every single day. Decades later, in 2014, this same stretch of water would make headlines again, as the last known radar contact with the missing flight MH370. But long before that, in the winter of 1948, something happened here that sailors still whisper about today. The day started ordinarily enough. The sky was clear. The sea was calm. A gentle wind moved across the water, nothing unusual. Nothing that hinted at what was coming. Several American and British merchant ships were making their routes through the strait, just as they did every day. Radio rooms hummed quietly in the background, tuned to the usual static of open ocean. Then, without warning, that static broke into something else entirely. It came through as Morse code, that old, dependable language of dots and dashes. In 1948, Morse code wasn't just old-fashioned. It was often the most reliable way to send a message across long distances. Voice radio had its limits. Fog, humidity, distance, obstacles in the atmosphere. All of it could turn a spoken message into static and noise, fading in and out until it was unrecognizable. Morse code didn't have that problem. A trained operator could send a message thousands of kilometers away, and it would arrive just as clear as when it left, dot for dot, dash for dash, translated instantly into words. And on this day, the message that came through began with a pattern. Every sailor recognized instantly. 3 short dots, 3 long dashes, 3 short dots again, repeated twice and sauce. What followed was chilling. The signal identified itself as coming from a ship called the SS Ourang Medan. The first message was simple, urgent, an appeal for a doctor. Any ship with shortwave radio, please respond. Medical help was needed immediately. Before any reply could be sent, a second message followed. And this one was worse. The ship's second officer was dead. Other crew members were dying too. And strangely, the message included an instruction. Don't try to offer medical advice remotely. It was too dangerous or too late. The ship gave its coordinates. Then came a final transmission. 3 words, sent and then nothing. I die. Radio operators across the strait tried desperately to reach the ship again. They called back on every frequency they could. Nothing came through. Minutes passed. Nothing. The silence stretched on, heavy and absolute. And everyone listening understood that something had gone terribly wrong aboard the Ourang Medan. The nearest vessel, an American merchant ship called the Silver Star, changed course immediately and began heading toward the ship's last known position. The crew didn't know what they'd find. A sinking ship, an attack, a fire. They braced for anything. After hours of travel, they spotted her. Through their binoculars, the crew of the Silver Star could see the Ourang Medan floating quietly on the open water, and what they saw only deepened the mystery. The ship wasn't damaged. There was no listing, no sign of flooding, nothing broken on the hull. She simply sat there, still and silent, as if waiting. But something was wrong. The Ourang Medan was a steamship, and steamships, when running, produce a constant stream of smoke from their engines. There was none. No smoke, no movement on deck, no sign of a single living soul aboard a ship large enough to carry a full crew. The Silver Star's captain tried the loudspeaker. He sounded the horn. Nothing answered but the sound of waves against the hull. Eventually he made the call, sent a team aboard. The boarding party climbed onto the deck of the Ourang Medan and were met with a cold, dead silence. The first body they found set the tone for everything that followed. The man's face was locked in an expression of pure terror, eyes wide open, mouth stretched in what looked like a final scream. His arms were thrown out in front of him, frozen mid-motion, as though he'd been trying to push something away in his last moment alive. And he wasn't alone. As the team moved further into the ship, they found more bodies scattered across the deck, slumped at the bridge, still at their stations. The captain was dead where he stood. His officers were dead around him. Even the ship's dog hadn't survived, found stiff, mouth open in a posture that looked almost aggressive, as if it too had been facing something terrifying in its final seconds. What unsettled the rescue team most wasn't just the number of bodies. It was what was missing. No wounds, no blood, no signs of a struggle, a fight, or an accident of any kind. Every single person aboard had died, and yet nothing on their bodies explained why. In the radio room, they found the operator who had sent those final, desperate messages. His hands were still resting on the Morse key, frozen in the exact position they must have been in when he typed his last words, I die. The Silver Star's crew made a decision. They would tow the Ourang Medan to the nearest port so investigators could examine what had happened. Ropes were prepared. The team began securing the ship for tow. That's when smoke began rising from cargo hold number 4, deep in the lower decks. At first it was thin, barely noticeable. Within moments, it had become fire, spreading fast, far faster than anyone expected. The boarding team had no choice. They abandoned the ropes, scrambled back into their small boats, and rowed hard for the safety of the Silver Star. They barely climbed back aboard when the Ourang Medan exploded. The blast tore through the ship, scattering debris across the water, and in moments the vessel that had carried its silent, terrified crew and whatever answers might have explained their deaths sank beneath the waves, taking every secret with it. What was left, in the end, was only the testimony of the Silver Star's crew. No wreckage was ever recovered. No bodies, no hard evidence at all. That absence of proof made the story easy to dismiss. Skeptics pointed out that Lloyd's Register, the definitive worldwide record of registered ships, had no listing anywhere for a vessel named SS Ourang Medan. To many, that was enough to call the whole thing a fabrication, a maritime legend dressed up as fact. But others weren't so sure. This was 1948, barely 3 years after the end of World War II. In that chaotic post-war period, plenty of ships sailed under false names, with false registrations, or no registration at all. Smuggling operations, black market cargo, ships tied to intelligence work, none of it was unusual. If the Ourang Medan had been involved in something illicit, its absence from official records wouldn't be a mystery at all. It would be expected. In 1954, a Dutch newspaper published an investigation into the story, including interviews with people who claimed to have worked aboard the ship at some point. According to them, the Ourang Medan had been used to move smuggled goods, which would explain why no legitimate registry ever had her name. Then decades later, in 2003, the story resurfaced in an unexpected place: declassified CIA files. Among them was a letter, written in 1959, describing the incident in detail. The author claimed to believe that if the truth behind the Ourang Medan were ever uncovered, it might also explain a string of other disappearances, ships and aircraft, that had vanished in the same waters over the years. That letter had sat sealed for 45 years before being released to the public. It's still available today, on the CIA's own website, for anyone who wants to read it. Of all the explanations offered over the decades, one has remained the most scientifically grounded: a chemical accident. The timing lines up. In the immediate aftermath of World War II, both Japan and Germany had large stockpiles of dangerous chemical agents, materials that, in the chaos of the war's end, didn't always end up properly destroyed or accounted for. It's entirely plausible that a ship like the Ourang Medan could have been secretly transporting some of it. Two substances come up most often in this theory: potassium cyanide and nitroglycerin. If seawater had breached a container of potassium cyanide, it would release a highly toxic gas, one that attacks the respiratory system and can kill within moments without leaving a mark on the body. That would explain the crew's terrified expressions, their sudden deaths, and the complete absence of any visible injury. Nitroglycerin, meanwhile, is notoriously unstable. Poorly stored, it can detonate on its own without warning. That could account for the fire the boarding party witnessed, and the final explosion that sent the ship to the bottom of the strait. There's a more unsettling version of this theory, too, one that ties the Ourang Medan to Unit 731. Unit 731 was a division of the Japanese military responsible for some of the most horrifying human experimentation of the 20th century, developing biological and chemical weapons through atrocities committed against prisoners and civilians. After Japan's surrender, the United States moved quickly to relocate many of the scientists connected to that program, some say in exchange for the research data they'd gathered. Under this theory, the Ourang Medan may have been quietly transporting some of that program's material, biological agents, chemical weapons, or both, as part of a classified operation. A leak during the voyage could have killed everyone aboard within minutes. And because the mission was never meant to exist on paper, the ship never appeared in any official registry at all. When the CIA's letter surfaced in 2003, many people felt it lent new weight to this darker version of events. Even the chemical theory, though, doesn't account for everything. The Silver Star crew described the atmosphere aboard the Ourang Medan as heavy, wrong, unsettling in a way that's hard to put into words. And the dog, found not just dead, but frozen in what looked like an aggressive stance, has stuck with people who've studied this case for decades. It's one of the details that keeps pulling the story toward the supernatural. No matter how many rational explanations are offered, to this day, no one knows for certain what happened aboard the SS Ourang Medan. The ship, its crew, and its cargo are gone, sunk somewhere in the waters of the Strait of Malacca, along with whatever truth might have explained those final, terrified faces. If we follow the evidence as far as it goes, the chemical leak theory remains the most convincing explanation available. A ship carrying dangerous, poorly stored cargo linked to the chaos of the war's aftermath, and a catastrophic leak during the voyage. Simple, tragic, preventable, if safety had been taken seriously. But without a wreck, without records, without survivors, that's all any of us can do, speculate. Even now, when ships pass through the Strait of Malacca, veteran sailors still tell the story of the Ourang Medan, a reminder that no matter how advanced we become, the ocean still keeps secrets we may never fully uncover.